Plugg Technologies, it's a
Yeah.
connector to this world of Latin America, this world of nearshoring. It can be a little bit intimidating, if you're a US company. And the US is managed in a way where, there's 50 states. If you're headquartered in Texas and you want to hire somebody in Arizona, you got to go through this whole thing of, it's the same country, but you got to register in Arizona and like maybe there's certain laws about like healthcare laws or vacation time laws and you have to adapt. So the US is intimidating enough, working across state borders. And then if you start to think about, well, how do I, like this Latin America thing that Brian and everybody else are talking about sounds interesting. How do I even access this talent? This is where we come in. We take the complications on our plate, with the entities and the compliance and the different countries and so forth. So all a company in the States really has to do is say, and we mostly focus on IT roles.
Hey guys, and welcome to the Grow IT podcast. One of your hosts here, Trey King. And today we are very excited to have our guest, Mr. Brian Sampson from Plugg Technologies. And we'll be diving into his story a little bit, as well as what his company does. And then, as always, some good engaging insights into the technology industry. So, make sure you stick around for this one. But without further ado, Brian, welcome. Thanks for hopping on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am fired up. This is going to be great.
Awesome. Brian, I think like you said, you're fired up. Let's start things by you introducing yourself and just tell us a quick snippet of your background, of your story.
Sure. I live in Hawaii today. But what I've been focused on the last 9 years is something we call nearshoring. Nearshoring is geographical. For example, if you're in Australia, you might nearshore to the Philippines. So you're not hopping oceans and time zones. If you're in the States, nearshoring is Latin America. So that's been my life for the last 9 years, mostly connecting talent with Latin America to US companies. And happy to dive into any of that stuff later, but that's really where my brain is focused most of the time.
Awesome. Tell me, but like, how did you're talking about nearshoring now, how did you like get into this business sector, right? Like, what was it that sparked that initial interest that, made you so passionate about what you're doing?
Yeah, so I think there might be a couple threads there. The first is in probably 15 years ago.
Yeah.
I took like a solo backpacker trip to Latin America, stayed in hostels,
Yeah,
got
I
a
just wanted
chance
to
to
ask
visit.
you, did you stay over in those backpackers hostels, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stayed in some of those and
Awesome.
Argentina, Buenos Aires, Santiago, Chile, Uruguay, Peru, Cusco, all that. And man, just had a total blast. And that was my first kind of foray into like real Latin America outside of the nice resorts they have in Mexico. And uh, and then I kind of had this in the back of my mind. So fast forward a couple of years, I've been a head of talent for a bunch of these VC funded tech startups in San Francisco. And I really caught that founder bug. I wanted to build my own thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw these like two things happen at once. The first was the world of fintech was exploding. And you had this kind of perfect storm of finance guys that had a great product vision and no shortage of capital, but they could care less about how it was built. And the second was you had this untapped region in Latin America that I had visited as a backpacker, but great English, smart people, same time zone. Um, so I started to think about I think there might be something there
Yeah.
and raise some money, put sales in San Francisco, but we put our developers in Argentina. I didn't have kids at the time, so just told my wife one day, "Hey, how'd you feel about moving to Argentina?" And she's like, where is that?" And
That makes
and
for interesting conversation, right?
yeah. And then, a couple weeks later, we're on a flight and spent about a year there. Everything you do as a founder, you're getting office space, hiring your team, finding lawyers, accountants, payroll, all the stuff. But that kind of got me going on this path and like full on immersed into nearshoring and Latin America.
My word. Tell me, Brian, based on your expertise, obviously you've been doing this for quite some time. Like, what are the, from a market perspective, what are the trends that you're picking up? You know, what way is the
Yeah,
winds blowing
sure.
these days?
Yeah. So, I'll talk about maybe what happened a couple of years ago, and then I'll talk
Sure.
about today.
Yeah.
So, a couple of years ago, COVID obviously, revolutionized all this stuff. Um, it didn't necessarily change the amount of dry powder and capital in the market. What it just did though was put everybody kind of on an even playing field. So the world was flat, you could work from anywhere, but not exactly. As many people that tried to like move to Vietnam and low cost places, it didn't always work for companies. They realized, hey, like we're only getting like 1 hour of overlap with our time zone. The rest of the time, like you're doing your thing, we're doing our thing, and we're kind of getting results, but collaboration seems to matter. So COVID like disrupted the office environment, but it was almost like a yo-yo. So
Yeah.
like it went from like one extreme to people working everywhere on whatever time zone they wanted to
Yeah.
snap back. Remote still works, but the time zone really does matter.
Mm, mm,
So uh so that was like gas on the fire for Latin America and nearshoring. And by the way, again, it's not just nearshoring, it's just not a Latin America thing. If you're in Australia, Southeast Asia is perfect. If you're in Europe, maybe Eastern Europe is perfect for that.
yeah.
Um, so it was just gasoline on the fire for Latin America. The continent exploded as the time zone was exactly the same as the US. And that really was just a boom. Tons and tons of talent was swooped up um, and companies really thrived because they weren't losing any of the collaboration and time zone. The other part of that is what's going on today. So I firmly believe that the 2020s are the decade for Latin America. That's still happening. But now we've got this elephant in the room with AI. And how excuse me one second. Let me just get a
Yeah,
glass
sure. Go
of
for it. Go for it.
water. So what's happening with AI? Obviously, it's growing faster than we could ever imagine. It
Yeah.
seems like the next version on top of the next version is 100x better, and those Terminator 2 movies are starting to get scary, right? But uh, but we're also seeing that companies like AI agents, they're really interesting. But most investors, most founders will say it's not exactly replacing the human,
Mhm.
it's augmenting the human.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now this magic is, well, what if I could nearshore and have that nearshore team AI optimized? Then you get all the cost benefits without really much sacrifice.
Mm,
That's
mm.
really what I see from AI. And maybe I'll also share. If you guys didn't know, the U.S. elected a new president,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a very AI bullish president. AI requires enormous amounts of power. You're not going to support all the data centers and all the things that AI is sucking energy with wind and solar yet.
Mm,
Maybe
good
in
point.
a long time. So you need to invest in fracking, fossil fuels, nuclear. That's where Trump's agenda is. The
Mm,
second is regulation. Now, for better or worse, like we talked about the Terminator 2 consequence, but if AI is overly regulated, then the US will be surpassed by China and other countries that don't have much regulation around it.
yeah,
And by making it more open sourced, easily accessible, this information can be shared. I think that's what the US is focused on. So, long answer to your question, Treg, but I see what's happening now, and the trends are more nearshoring and the US, especially pushing hard on AI.
got it, got it. Just to latch on to what you said now from nearshoring, I think Brian, this is a good sign that because I think everybody's waiting for this, right? Please explain to us what it is what your company does.
Sure. So Plugg Technologies is really a connector. It's a
Yeah,
connector to this world of Latin America, this world of nearshoring. It can be a little bit intimidating, if you're a U.S. company, and the U.S. is managed in a way where there's 50 states. If you're headquartered in Texas and you want to hire somebody in Arizona, you got to go through this whole thing of, it's the same country, but you got to register in Arizona and
yeah,
pay
yeah,
taxes in Arizona, and and like maybe there's certain laws about like healthcare laws or vacation time laws, and you have to adapt. So the US is intimidated enough, working across state borders. And then if you start to think about, well, how do I, like this Latin America thing that Brian and everybody else are talking about sounds interesting, but how do I even access this talent?
yeah,
This is where we come in. We take the complications on our plate, with the entities and the compliance and the different countries and so forth. So all a company in the States really has to do is say, and we mostly focus on IT roles. So, say they need a full stack developer or a DevOps engineer,
yeah,
Java, QA, things like that. They just come to us, they come to Plugg and they say, hey, we're looking to hire for these types of roles. Um, and we'll come back and we'll say, okay, tell us about your hardware environment, tell us about your budget, tell us about the seniority level you're thinking, and a couple other things. We'll be advisors on which countries might be the right countries for them to consider. Get
yeah,
some agreement. Because just like the U.S. states are different, Latin America is a whole bunch of different countries, and it's not one country. So they all have different trade-offs and benefits. So we'll
yeah,
advise them on which country to look into. And then we'll go out and use our infrastructure, recruiters, operations people, and go and find the candidates, interview them. Now, where we try to differentiate ourselves is not just with the education that we provide our clients, but also by as soon as we find the talent, we try to get out of the way because we think it's a much better relationship if that candidate that we place
yeah,
feels like they're part of the client team, where
right,
they really know each other. It's not like
yeah,
all pulled up and we played the telephone game and stuff gets
yeah,
lost in communication. We want these engineers to feel like they're part of the client. They're wearing the client's t-shirt. They're, on all the meetings. They're in all
yeah,
the collaboration. It's all direct. And we're just the guys that make the connection and then allow it to happen with our infrastructure, with payroll, legal, all that stuff.
That is very, very interesting. There's a lot of value points, in that I've picked up already. But tell me, out of your just coming from your own words, what would you say is like the most significant value, right? That your business, what you guys bring to the table.
Yeah, I think our biggest differentiator is going to be our ability to educate. With my personal background, having lived in Argentina for a year,
Yeah, yeah.
my partner's background, he was an expat in Mexico for a couple of years. We have this lived experience.
Mm, mm,
We
mm.
can talk about the tree-lined streets and the cafes, but also the worker strikes and this law and the trade-off there, and this inflation percentage and how it impacts. And
Yeah.
um,
And
we can
understanding the
provide,
culture as well, right?
yeah, absolutely. Different cultures within these different countries, absolutely, Trey. So this education value, I don't think it's to be underestimated. Because
Mm.
we're beyond the commodity level of, labor is labor. There's a lot of nuances to this, and having the right person in the right country can make or break your company, and that's where we come in.
Excellent. Uh, if we can just quickly step back a bit and just talk like business in general. In your opinion, right? Um, what type of mindset? Two questions, twofolded. What type of mindset would you say is needed to be a good, firstly, a founder of a company, and then maybe in the same breath as well, you mentioned in the beginning how things happen for you, obviously starting out, that push to do your own, to as an entrepreneur, starting your own company, making that break, right? And some of the important things that you've learned as well in your career, that if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think entrepreneurship is hard. Even in the good years, it's hard. Um,
Well said.
so you have to be able to get yourself up again a lot. You'll get punched in the face all the time, and you'll get punched when you least expect it. You'll
Yeah.
think everything's perfect, and um, it's hard enough when everything's in your control,
Mm,
and there's a lot of things that happen that are also outside your control. So
mm.
maybe that's not a motivating inspiration to be an entrepreneur, but just know that it's not easy. You have to be able to get up and get up and get up and get up. The other thing that I'll say is it's so rewarding. Like I have 10x'd my learning, from being a founder. And I've learned about financial forecasting and
Yeah.
accounting and marketing and strategy and all these things that I never really touched when I was a department head, right? Department head for another company.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll also say that maybe some of the lessons that I've learned, along the way. It's not a case for micromanagement, but there was something to be said in these recent articles about founder mode. I think business books, and I have an MBA from UCLA in California, and
Yeah.
UCLA is no different from all these other MBAs of like they kind of teach you scale, and then you hire your team and you just kind of sit in your office and do strategy all day. And it's not really true. Even a Fortune 500 CEO should be out recruiting. They should be doing client visits. They should be, in the business enough. There's all these things about working on your business, but if you let go too much, it's hard to really build something great.
Got it.
The other thing is raising capital, and I've done it.
Yeah.
It's not always great. As soon as you raise capital, even if it's just a trivial amount, you've kind of lost control of your own company. And you could lose your company through that. Some of these investors are smarter than you. They've done this many, many, many more times than you have, the terms, the conditions.
Yeah.
So just tread carefully. I think a lot of times raising money is seen as a huge win. I feel like raising money is when you've taken enormous pressure on yourself, right? So just be ready for the pressure.
We're
It
ready
can
for that.
be it can be a fantastic lubricant and accelerant,
Yeah.
uh, but it's not a zero trade-off thing.
Yeah.
There are things you're gonna
Something's
pay.
got to give.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right.
Wow. No, that's quite profound. I think there's a lot of people making some notes here today. The Brian, first and foremost, I can fully understand why you and your business are so successful. The value points that you've mentioned as well. The way that how you perceive things and go about doing things. I wish you all the best for going forward, in the company, growing from strength to strength. So thank you so much for coming on today. And before I let you go, Brian, if you don't mind, just to tell the listeners where can they get hold of you guys?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. This is a true pleasure. Really appreciate you having me.
Sure.
Our website is plugg.tech. That's TECH, plug.tech. And Brian Sampson, SAMSON. I'm all over LinkedIn. Can't miss me.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All the best. Take care.
All right. Thank you.